Howdy, folks. Welcome back or welcome aboard. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show, and we are extremely glad that you're here. We've got a lot to cover tonight, a little bit of old business, quite a bit of new business, and before I dive into that, I need to give you a heads up. Ms. Surefire is having some challenges with speaking. She's got a bit of an allergy issue going on thanks to what's going on in the air. She's raising her hand like I can handle.
Howdy, folks. I left my voice in Nashville.
Oh, there you go. And Uncle Bocce left himself somewhere. I don't know. He's not in the studio, but we do have an Uncle Bocce's brief for you so that we can keep the storyline going. The other thing is, we had technical issues last week. We did a show, and it never went out. So I apologize. We just decided not to do it on an odd night. But, you know, that's a couple of things. The other thing is I want to read you something that said that the Trumpinator is continuing to drain the swamp, and he's just picked up the activity. A couple of minutes ago, literally, this just happened. They issued subpoenas, they being the United States Congress. Representative Devin Nunes, a Republican from California, served the CIA, the NSA, and all reference to the unmasking that references the Obama-era spying that occurred and the classified intelligence reports that are leaking data to news media organizations. So he is continuing to drain the swamp and continuing to get to the bottom of it. And hip, hip, hooray, Doc Owen Show reached one of our goals, and that was 5,000 followers on Twitter. We got up to about 5,003 so far, and it kind of drops back. It fluctuates a little bit, but we are at the 5K mark. I sent a direct message to the winner of the contest and the 5,000th follower and have not heard back from her yet, so I'll refrain from going any further with that except to say that we're following through with our commitment. And thank you very much, one and all, for putting the word out there for us and doing our retweets, et cetera, et cetera. It's awfully important. We don't consider that we're done. We just consider that's a plateau that we've reached. And the next one we're going for is 10,000. So here we go. Rock and roll. We're after it. We're all over the social media. Doc Owen Show, DocOwenShow. We also have a DocOwenShow.com blog, which is where we post interesting items that either we have written or we've found, and we put them out there on the blog. Also, in the upper right-hand corner of the blog is a good place to go listen to or download the podcast. Immediately after the show, it goes up on the blog, so that's an easy thing to remember. And right below that, you have the opportunity to sign up for the intermittent Doc Owen Show Insider newsletter, so we don't harass you. As well, and you can tell I've got a bit of a cough going on too. It's a challenge around here. We have free apps for both iPhone and Android. Very simple. Go to your store that is relevant to your device. Do a search on Doc Owen Show. Download it. Boom. You're in there. You've got access to our entire historical library, almost 3.5 years worth of stuff that we've got out there following events and interviewing some very interesting people along the way. Well, the show must go on. So Ms. Surefire is going to work her way through an abbreviated inspirational note for us, correct?
Yes.
Well,
I'm going to try my best.
There you go.
Yeah.
Take it away, Ms. Surefire.
Tonight's quote comes from brainyquote.com.
Okay.
If y'all can understand what I'm saying.
We got it so far.
Okay. It's from a gentleman that we all have heard at one time or another, I hope, is Isaac Newton.
Ah, yeah.
Scientist.
There you go.
And his quote is, "Tact is the art of making a point without making an enemy."
Ooh, nice.
Thank you.
I'm sure that the audience and a lot of my close friends would understand if I say that's not a word I've heard used a lot. But I like it. As Uncle Bocce is not in the studio, we don't have a moment in history. I didn't do the research for him, so we'll just have to live with it and dive straight into a leadership brief, which is from the 250 Optimistic Quotes from the Optimist Club, the book that I have. This is from Henry David Thoreau, who was a well-known American author, etc., and actually he was best known for a book he wrote on civil disobedience. I'm going to give you something about that in just a minute because that caused me to do a bit of research. The quote is, "None are so old as those that have outlived enthusiasm." Okay. I want to make a little side comment about that civil disobedience thing. Here's exactly what he said. This is one of the quotes out of his civil disobedience book, if you will. "I ask for not at once no government, but at once a better government." So there's a lot of things out there that say that Mr. Thoreau was an anarchist and doing his best to overthrow the government. And I don't believe that to be the case, nor does the articles that you go out there and search for and actually find out the truth instead of listening to your neighbor. So unless your neighbor's delivering the truth to you, which is you're in good shape. You got a good neighbor. We spent last week in and around Nashville, Tennessee. We had a chance to visit with some friends of the Doc Owen Show, one of whom we had met before, and we visited with her at length, Publius Huldah. You will hear from her tonight. And the other we've had on the show a couple of times, but had never gotten face-to-face. So we went by Global Vision Bible Church, which is the headquarters of Mr. Pastor Greg Lockie, and got to sit in the pews on Sunday, and then went back and visited with him for a little bit. So I thought you might, we just thought you might enjoy. These are things we did not record. These were personal visits. I didn't want it to seem like we were just there to, get a clip for the show. We've got plenty of time to do that. So what you're going to hear on both instances are things that we have put out there before, but I think I know that they are extremely relevant. And, it just seemed like the time to do it since we had just visited with them, and maybe we can add a comment or two. Before we dive into that, this is where we would hear Uncle Bocce's brief, and tonight is absolutely no exception. So, Ms. Surefire, if you can hit the magic clicker, we'll hear what Uncle Bocce has to say.
Sure will.
All right. We're on now. Going to hear from Uncle the Bocce in our weekly version of Bocce's brief.
Here we go.
What do you got?
We're going to start a new, maybe 6-week series now, and we're going to do an introduction tonight. And what we're going to do is just change the focus just a little bit to see another aspect of what was happening in America
pre-America
Declaration of Independence.
Okay.
We've seen how the Brits have angered the colonists.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're going to take a look a little bit at the people and the organizations that helped this along. The people, it was like, everybody was for everybody, e pluribus unum kind of thing. So it wasn't just what the Brits were doing. Here's what the people in America were doing. Now, the unanimous Declaration of Independence was a curious outcome. Remember the Albany Union?
Yeah.
Plan that Ben Franklin came up with? Because, he was a little bit ahead of his time in 1754. He thought, hey, we need to band together.
Right.
And he did this whole thing. He even created a flag and join or die and all that kind of stuff. And it went, nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just a little bit too soon. Okay? So then in 1763...
And he the guy that flew the kite in the
Yes.
rain?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
Imagine that.
What a nutcase.
It couldn't have been made of paper, though. Anyway, let's go.
Well, it wasn't raining where it was up there.
Yeah. Okay, so in 1763, it was difficult, if not near impossible, to get the colonies to agree, even on the time of day. This coming together will happen very gradually. We've already gone through a little bit of it because of the acts of the Parliament. We've examined those events, and the people propelled the colonies to revolt. A careful examination, however, of the stages of unity is in order. Okay? The Declaration of Independence was the product of the Second Continental Congress.
Correct.
Okay?
Yeah.
But prior to the Second Continental Congress,
There was a first.
there
contact.
were at least two earlier coming together, intercolonial conferences. We already talked about one. Remember the Stamp Act Congress?
Yes.
They brought them together. Okay, so
right.
that was one thing. Then after that, it was the First Continental Congress came. You remember why that they called the First Continental Congress? It was in response to the British Parliament's enactment of the Coercive Acts. They would go back to those That gelled the people. It brought them together once again. So we start seeing this habit of people getting together. So each time they got together, each successive Congress brought them closer and closer together with greater participation. And each time the representatives met, they were more accustomed to compromise with one another.
Well, I was just about to say they were more willing.
Yeah, more willing.
In other
Exactly.
words, the tighter they turned the screws on the colonies,
That's correct.
the more the colonies reacted by coming together
Yeah, exactly.
in a common defense. Okay.
Yeah, so as it became desperate, they, like you said, they were more willing to trust not only themselves but their national leaders, the people who were standing up and leading.
Right.
Okay, so there were some organizations that were formed. One of them was called the Long Room Club, and guess who was a member of that? Remember James Otis?
Oh, yeah.
Who'd he pal around with? Samuel Adams?
Adams, the beer guy.
Yeah, and the other guy, John Hancock?
Yeah.
And Paul Revere. Remember, they were all members of this early organization, and it was formed in reaction to the British measures.
How old were these guys at the time?
Oh well,
They weren't
gee
really
whiz.
that old, were they?
No, they weren't, because this was,
I mean, they were maybe in their 40s.
no, they were probably young.
Right.
The old guy was Benjamin Franklin, but
He was old by
Yeah.
the time he was 19.
yeah, that's true. So this particular association actively promoted non-importation beyond Massachusetts.
Okay.
To put the skids or the block against the importation from England. Another group, or two groups actually, were the Sons and Daughters of Liberty.
Okay.
You may have heard of them.
Wow, yeah.
They proved to be very, very effective. The Sons of Liberty represented the radical wing of the Patriots through the years of crisis. Can you imagine? The radical wing. Goodness gracious. They would not hesitate to scare a customs official, to scare him out of town, to tar and feather him, because they consider him the enemy.
This was long before the days of Harley Davidson.
That's correct. You're absolutely right. Although they were
Sons of
strongest. Yeah. Sons of Liberty or Guns of Liberty?
Hey.
Either way.
Right.
It's all good.
Okay, although they were strongest in Boston, the Sons of Liberty, they were really very active in many of the port cities, reaching as far south as Charleston, South Carolina. Beautiful city. I love Charleston.
Yep.
Okay? And I'm going to bring a woman into this again. Okay? This is what...
That's 2 weeks in a row.
This is what a famous woman said about this, because she wanted her husband to remember the ladies. Okay? She said, I wish you would remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not push such unlimited power in the hands of husbands. Abigail Adams.
Sam Adams'
Standing
wife?
up. No. John
John
Adams'
Adams'
wife.
wife.
Yeah.
Ah.
Oh, they wrote back and forth to each other a lot. She was very, very active. Okay. Now we go to the Daughters of Liberty. They performed an equally important function. Non-importation. For it to succeed, guess what? The women were very desperately needed because the Daughters of Liberty, they would ensure that women would not buy British goods.
Okay, right.
And if they don't buy British goods, that means that we had to do more homespinning here to get cloth and all of that.
Right.
So that's what they did. They came in and they promoted that kind of stuff.
They were the original MAGAs.
Yeah. Well,
Make America Great Again.
there you go.
Yeah,
There you
that's
go.
true. They had little
Exactly.
red hats
Yeah.
back then too.
Okay, and then one final thing, the unity, which was starting to happen, it couldn't be reached without communication. So there was a lot of great literature that was written during this time, okay? Patrick Henry,
Yep.
the Virginia Resolves, which really was more or less a precursor to the Declaration of Independence. And then was John Dickinson's famous circular letter, which he sent out. He talked about the letter from a farmer in Pennsylvania, and it was mostly exposing the Townsend Acts and all of that kind of thing. So those were great literary.
Wait. You glossed over something I'm not
Okay.
familiar with. What famous circular letter? What do you mean circular letter?
Circular letter back then was really more like we call a newsletter that was
Okay.
circulated amongst
So
all different
you read it and
organizations.
passed it on.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So
Literally, probably.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Paperless.
And then Samuel Adams, he organized the first committee of correspondence to circulate the important arguments of the day.
Right.
That was Sam. And then Thomas Paine. And we're going to look a little bit more into Thomas Paine later. Okay. Remember what his publication was? That nearly won the Revolutionary War? Common Sense.
Right.
Common Sense.
Right.
It sold 120,000 copies in the first 3 months of publication. And you know George
Back
Washington.
then?
Yes. And you know George
That's like the whole
Washington read that.
population of the colony.
George Washington read that, and he got copies for every single member of his army,
right.
and told you read this.
Right.
So it was that important. So even the Declaration of Independence served not only to send a message to King George, and this is important for the next 6 weeks.
Okay.
Not only to King George the message, but to convince many American colonists of the glory of their cause.
Yeah,
they
right.
had a cause.
Right.
So it was all coming together.
Right.
Okay, so next week we'll continue on with that, and eventually we'll get to Declaration of Independence.
That's a good setup. And actually a real exciting time.
Yes, it
If you
is.
ask me. I mean, that's a time of real interest because it translates very well to today.
Yes, it does.
And it translates very well to when you were talking about the first and second, the
Continental Congress,
and them coming together and the the pressure that was binding them together. I was reminded of the current movement about the Convention of States and the current movement about Article 5 and balanced budget amendment and all the things that are going on by the states to countermand what's coming out of Washington. So if you really step back and look at it and you are aware of history or you take the time to become aware of history, which we do here and try to do for the audience, Washington is impersonating Great Britain.
absolutely, you couldn't have said it better.
It's like the British have landed,
Exactly.
no pun intended, and taken over D.C., and they're doing to the states what Great Britain used to do to the colonies.
Amen, brother.
Right?
Man after my own heart.
To
Yes.
connect some dots.
Exactly.
If you look at it that way, then you can see into the future the results of these events.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's right.
And that's exactly what we said last week in one of the quotes from Winston Churchill. The further back you look, the farther ahead you can see.
That's right.
All right?
That's true.
That's right.
So the audience needs to understand why we do this.
Exactly.
I mean, besides it gives us a touch point with Uncle Bocce at least once a week. And, he's a lost soul. And so we try to bring him in and make sure that he's still alive and he's eating and he's washing properly and, taking care of himself and grooming his hair and, doing the day-to-day act. Oh, he doesn't have it. I forgot.
Like a health check on him?
Yes, kind of a health check.
Like a health check.
It's like Aetna calling and saying, we want to do an in-home service, So we don't want to go to his house.
Yeah, we bring him
that's
to ours over here.
kind of obvious. So we bring him into the studio. Oh, anyway, I digress. So the point is the comparison between what was going on as a result of Great Britain and the implorable acts, as we called them, or the
intolerable,
what are they?
Coercive acts,
coercive and intolerable, right? Mm-hmm. It's full circle.
Yes, it is.
Did they have fake news back out then? You were talking about the circulars coming out of and the Common Sense book by Thomas Paine and the circular. Yeah. Did they also have a fake news circular that went around?
Not that I know of.
See, that'd be good to know.
I don't think.
Did the British put out a fake version of that?
Not that I have found.
Okay, so they've gotten more devious this time around. Mm-hmm. All right. Good job, by the way.
Thank you.
Who are you?
I am Uncle Bocce. Uncle Bocce, UNCLEBACI at DocOwenShow.com.
Keep those cards and
those spurs.
Coming. All right.
Thank you, Uncle Bocce.
Thanks, Uncle Bocce. It's amazing how these things tend to tie together from week to week. And you would think it was with a supreme amount of adept planning, but it's not. It's just that we stay focused, going in the same direction and keeping track of what's going on. But we, unlike a lot of other shows, we tend to mix in an awful lot of historical information, background information, because we assume that you are getting a lot of day-to-day rhetoric and complaints and feedback and positive and negative on current events, et cetera, et cetera. And it's always best to kind of back away from that a little bit until the dust settles, and then you can figure out what really happened. And some of the opinions that you might have heard were correct. Some of the opinions that you might have heard are probably wrong. But nonetheless, they're opinions rather than fact-based, and we try to do just the opposite. Speaking of that, as you heard Uncle Bocce, and we were honest enough to tell you that that was a pre-recorded episode, and Bocce and I are not necessarily on the same page in terms of the Convention of States. And you're about to, because I have had the opportunity to sit and listen to our next guest, a lady by the name of Publius Huldah. We have had her on the show before, nicknamed PH, and she is the world's, well, I think I go into all of this in the clip that you are about to hear, but it's, I'm skipping over Lockie for right now. We'll come back to him. So, because it's relevant to what we just heard from Uncle Bocce. So, listen up, pay attention. You might even want to make some notes. This is a scholarly article, a scholarly approach, speaking out against the current movement of the Convention of States. So, I'm going to turn it over to Publius Huldah. Go for it. The Rolling Stone and about to interview Mick Jagger. I'm in the presence of a young lady by the name of Publius Huldah. I think I know. I tried to look up what it means in Latin. I know enough Latin to know what the Publius is, but I couldn't find the Huldah. So you're going to have to explain that to the audience. But as you know, as the audience knows, I quote you all the time. And I refer to you on my blog. You are what I call a WFA, which is the world's foremost authority on the United States Constitution. And after hearing you speak for an hour and a half prior to this, I understand why we think so much of you.
Thank you.
That, it's absolutely well earned. So, Publius, how are you? Welcome to Texas.
I'm well,
Welcome to
you.
Texas.
About Huldah.
Yes.
At 2 Kings 22, there was a prophet Huldah. The law had been lost in Israel, and they were making renovations to the temple, and they discovered the book of the law, and they took it to the King Josiah, and King Josiah looked at it and said, "Take this to Huldah and see what the word of the Lord is." And so they took it to Huldah, and she recognized it as the law, God's law.
God's law.
And she pronounced, though, however, that because Israel had been apostate for so long,
Yes.
God had resolved to bring judgment upon Israel.
Okay.
But he would postpone it for a little while because of King Josiah's faithfulness.
Okay.
So in our country, our law, the Constitution, has been, in effect, lost for 100 years.
You made that statement.
Yeah.
I peg it at about 60 to 70, but I'm sure you're right. So
Yeah.
yes, ma'am.
So I see my duty as to bring the law back to America. And of course, Publius is the pen name that the writers of the Federalist Papers use. So Publius Huldah.
Got it.
And that's
there you
my
have
name.
it.
Yeah.
There you have it.
That describes my mission in life.
Well, you said your duty, and obviously you are, besides a constitutional scholar, you're a biblical scholar.
Yes.
Because the two are, as we know, rather well entwined.
They are.
And it's trying to separate the two that causes issues.
Correct.
In both worlds.
Yes.
Right? Because you spoke today about, you quoted, I've forgotten who, but, one of our founders, about electing people with virtue and wisdom. Neither of which we're doing a very good job of.
Right. That was James Madison.
Right.
Said that.
Okay. I knew it was one of the founders. I just didn't remember which one.
At the Virginia Ratifying Convention on June the 20th, 1788.
I told you, folks. Chapter and verse. She had a debate today with a young man. I really, to be honest, don't know exactly his name or where he's from. I'll find out before I put the broadcast on. But he was a salesman. He was doing sales 101 techniques, and I used to be a sales manager and taught sales. And he was up against PH, as he's affectionately called, and who was just quoting chapter and verse from the Constitution and how it came about and holding up evidence after evidence after evidence. It was quite something. It wasn't a very fair match, but it's okay. So you mentioned the fact that you referred to it as being your duty, and I would consider it more of a calling. In other words, you're a lawyer.
Yes.
You have a law degree. Did you practice law before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a litigation attorney.
Okay.
Trial and appellate.
Trial and appellate.
Yeah.
All right. How long did you do that?
Oh, I practiced law for a little over 20 years.
Really?
And then I retired because I was exhausted.
Yes.
I was going to retire to a life of peace, gardening, having a rose garden, cooking, gourmet cooking, and learning biblical Greek. That was my plan.
Okay.
But then Obama got elected. So I took out my...
So all of this is relatively new to you.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
I didn't know that. I was not aware of that.
I put
Okay.
everything in
So
my
he did the
life.
same thing to you that he did to me. That was when I decided to
I
start
said,
using my voice.
I have got to make restoring liberty in this country the main purpose of my daily life.
Wow.
And that's what I've done ever since.
Good for you.
And I'm unfunded and unaffiliated, so this is all donated time.
Well, but that's probably, as we both know, unfortunately, that's the only way to stay pure.
Yeah,
I've not found anybody yet that I've not found any funding sources yet that don't have an agenda. Eventually, and that's what you're avoiding. So, well, good for you. That was one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. As you know, our tagline for the show is delivering truth to youth. Our objective is to reach the 16 to 30-year-old audience. How do we do that? You're a smart lady. I mean, you've got this calling and this message to get out there. And yet most of the time our audiences look like they did today. So are you seeing the capability to do that? Do you have audiences that are younger? I mean, are you getting those venues?
I spent most of my life talking to other lawyers and judges.
So I'm so sorry for you, but that's okay.
Well,
you got to do what you got to do, right?
So I only began talking to the public
after Obama
got elected.
Wow.
Most of the people in my audiences are, as we say, a little bit older.
Yep.
But I do occasionally see some young people.
Okay.
But what my hope is that I see it as my calling is to put information and arguments out there and to hope that others will pick it up and translate it into terms that everyone can understand, to popularize it among the young.
You do a fabulous job of putting it out there in terms that everybody can understand, let me tell you. But in a scholarly way. So what you're saying, popularize is a very good term for it. All right, so what we need to do is we need to hook you up with a rock and roll band that can create a ballad of sorts in the current genre.
well, art is one of the most powerful ways of reaching people.
Right.
Charles Dickens, his novel Bleak House was an extremely popular novel, and deservedly so. That novel resulted in the reformation of the British Chancery court system. It had such influence. So, yes, artists have tremendous influence. But I don't know how to translate what I talk about in legal terms into art because I'm not gifted with artistry.
Oh, I think more than you know, but that's okay. And it's somewhat in the eye of the beholder. I mean, I found what you did today quite presentable, quite artistic. I mean, in its own arena. You raised the bar.
Thank you.
And particularly in Yoakum, Texas, of all places. Do you know where you are? I mean, this is a small, we're in rural Texas.
I was so honored well, first of all, I was raised on a farm. So there's nothing I love more than
you're in your comfort zone.
I'm in my comfort zone in a rural area.
Okay.
And I was so honored to be invited here to speak.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, for them to do that, I think it was, when I found out you were going to be this close to where we are, San Antonio, about an hour and a half away, and not but 15 minutes away from my favorite brewery.
Which is that?
Shiner, Texas. There's a really good brewery about 15 miles up the road that serves some mean beer.
And I love driving in Texas with your 75-mile-an-hour speed limits, and there's no traffic on the road. Oh, it's great driving here.
Oh, I don't know so much about the no traffic, but you must you drove all the way. You drove from Tennessee.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's a hard charge. I've done that. That's if you came, what'd you do? Come across to Dallas and then down, or did you cut through East Texas?
My husband drove.
You did?
I don't do driving.
Okay.
My vision is so poor I can't see.
That's all that time buried in books, so you see well up close. What can we do you've answered one question, about, I really want to know what we can do to energize the youth. But how would that work? Do you have some people that are taking your work and kind of popularizing it, as you say?
Yes.
I would hate to reinterpret. In other words, because I like it like it is.
Yeah.
But how would the young folks?
Well, my presentation today was about 35 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
I need to. The videos that people will watch on the internet.
Yes, ma'am.
YouTube's short ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I did have one 12-minute video, which was posted on one website, which had over 500,000 views. But that was because it was about natural-born citizen, and people were very interested in that because of the election. But for the most part, people won't watch videos if they're longer than 5 minutes.
The audience couldn't see me grinning when you brought that up.
About national popular vote?
Well, no, the natural-born citizen.
Oh, yeah.
You did a paper on that, or you put something on the blog.
Yeah, plus the video.
I looked it up. I was a Ted Cruz supporter, but I like to think of myself as a purist in terms of the Constitution. And I attend a regular monthly meeting of like-minded patriots, and I speak up and speak out. And
really? No kidding.
Yeah, you could never tell. And I had to apologize to them because I quoted you. I said, this is where I got it. And she's got it very well interpreted, and Mr. Cruz is not eligible, according to the terms of no matter how much we may like him, if we really want to be constitutional purists, which I like to think that I am, I have to switch.
Yeah.
And I did. I stood up publicly and made that,
Good for you. A man who adheres to principle. Yeah.
Well, if I'm going to ask others to,
right,
then I need to do the same.
Yes.
I need to let people know that that's the way I feel about it. So that was really the first time that I got hooked on what you had to say, or committed to what you had to say. Let's put it that way. So it's funny that you brought it up. So what's on the horizon? What's on the horizon? Other than this, what do you see in terms of? We just had a national election where there are those of us that are hoping he lives long enough to be inaugurated, and certainly lives through at least his first term. I think it's going to be challenging. I really do. And that's an unfortunate thought to have. I don't like to have to think that way. But what do you see on the horizon beyond the Convention of States, beyond as the threats to an Article 5 convention, which I really liked what you had to say, and I recorded it.
Yeah, it's a marketing gimmick.
I know that's what you said.
Yeah.
And when you shot holes in it with your references to the past, then. Yeah, it becomes very apparent.
Yeah.
But they're strong. It's good. As you said, I think in the blog, they've been very effective marketing it to Tea Party groups, who are now being effective marketing it to their state representatives.
See, here's the problem. People who do as I do, go around speaking against an Article 5 convention. We are smeared, maligned, slandered.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, folks, remember, she's a very strong attorney, so when she uses those words, that she knows exactly what she's saying. So go ahead.
We are not allowed to speak to Tea Party groups. The chairman of a Tea Party group, I am not. If the leadership of the Tea Party group has bought the con, they will not permit me to address their members. This kind of censorship is going on all over the country.
Nor,
And
not just you, but anybody,
Yeah.
anybody. Like if
Yeah.
I wanted to speak in support of you, as a trainee, if you will,
Yeah.
or whatever.
You would not be allowed to address many of these Tea Party groups.
As soon as they found out what I was,
Yes.
right.
It is Americans who are censoring other Americans.
Yes, ma'am.
The federal government doesn't need to censor people like me.
It's
So-called patriotic Americans are censoring me. This happens all the time. And I have had several of my events canceled.
Are you really?
Yes. Mark Meckler, who is head of the Convention of States Project.
I know the name,
And
yep.
Michael Ferris, who is involved with the Convention of States Project and the Parental Rights Amendment. They have personally telephoned hostesses of mine and have urged them to cancel my appearance. That is how adamant they are about preventing people from hearing the anti-convention side.
You must really have something to say.
I do,
But the fact that they're,
and I back it up with evidence.
how dare you?
Yes.
That's unheard of.
You notice that the young man tonight didn't produce any original source documents. All he told us to do was to go to the website, the COS website, and read scholarly articles that other COS supporters had written. No original source documents from our founders and framers,
Correct.
which is all I deal with.
And yes, ma'am. And I got a chuckle out of his reference to scholarly articles.
Oh, yes. So
I
did
doubt
I. Because they all say the same thing.
Right. It's marketing literature.
Yes.
Right. I mean, it's like,
And they quote each other as
well, sure.
authority.
Current day marketing literature is called white papers. You know, they put it out as reality, and really it's a marketing piece. You know, it's angled to, and yeah, they feed off of each other. They link their blogs to other blogs,
Yes.
not to historic documents like you
Right.
do. You know,
And when they do mention historic documents, they don't produce them, but they misrepresent them. For example, the young man tonight, I mentioned the April 2014 video where Justice Scalia said, I don't want a constitutional convention. Oh, what would come out of that?
right?
The young man tonight cited Justice Scalia's words in a symposium in 1976.
76 is what I think he said. Yeah.
1976. Well, as I told the people today, in 1976, I thought abortion was just fine.
Was okay.
Yeah. But then I was presented with the truth, and I got convicted, and I renounced my
Right.
sin.
Right.
And so anybody who cited me as saying abortion was okay in 1976 would be dishonest if he presented that as my position today.
If they, yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
which is what he did.
Right. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I noticed that just like you did, and I saw you flinch. Flinch may not be a good word, but you know, she was constantly just holding up, just for the audience, holding up a piece of paper. You know, one of the main things that, and as a matter of fact, last week, before I realized you were going to be here, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about the enumerated powers. And
My favorite phrase.
that's not us.
No.
I was telling the audience that
Okay.
they're not beeping us to get out. But well, here it is right here. Boom. You know,
That's
the
it.
enumerated powers, and it fits in about one quarter of an 8.5 by 11 piece of
Yeah.
paper. I mean, it's minimal.
Yeah.
And so the gist of the conversation or the back and forth was, we already have what they are trying to do, a convention of states to create.
Article 5 convention.
Why do I keep doing that?
Because
it's working.
Because it's working, yeah.
Dad, Bertie.
By
You're right.
using
I mean,
that
it's working.
Terminology, they make people think that there's a convention controlled by the states, and that's not true. Article 5 doesn't say that. Article 5 says Congress calls it. And the word call is a legal term. It has a specific import.
Yes, ma'am.
It means a person who calls a meeting or calls a convention, this is the topic, this is where it's going to be, this is the time, this is how we're going to pay for it.
And this is who will be there.
Who's going to be there.
Right.
Or this is how they'll be appointed.
Right.
That's what it means to call a convention. And Article 1, Section 8, last clause, the necessary and proper clause.
I hope you enjoyed that. I always enjoy the conversations with Publius, and as a matter of fact, she had to correct me on some of the same points this trip when we were up there visiting with her. So I think I have gotten it down. Let's put it this way. If you're in an office environment, if you're in a work environment, when somebody puts a meeting on your calendar using Outlook, that is the person that called the meeting. All right. And you will look to that person in the meeting to have the agenda. And they have also decided who to send the meeting request to. So it does have a very specific meaning, and you just have to think of it that way. The next person you're going to hear from is he's a very sedate young man. By the name of Greg Lockie that we've had on the show. He is absolutely delightful. We spent about a half an hour talking with him one afternoon, and I had to take a nap afterwards. It was just, and I didn't do anything but sit there and go, yep.
That's true.
It was absolutely amazing. But this is Pastor Lockie's kind of take on the election. We talked to him right before the election, so let's see what he has to say.
Hey guys, Pastor Greg Locke here. Since everybody's making a fuss over who to vote for, let me tell you what I voted for yesterday. I voted for continued religious liberty and the freedom to be able to stand up and speak out according to my beliefs. I voted for my Second Amendment rights and to keep the hands of big government off of my guns. I voted against the continual murder and butchering of babies. I voted against open borders and for stricter security if you're going to call America your home. I voted against lies, deception, overspending, and all-around stupid government. I voted that we don't make deals with ISIS and radical Islamic terror groups, but rather we call them out for who and what they really are. And of unbelievable importance, I voted for conservative appointments to the Supreme Court, because that's going to have a lot to do with what happens in this nation we call America. So I'm not voting for a person or a party. I'm voting for our future.
Thank you, sir. Again, you need to go to Global Vision Bible Church on YouTube. Take advantage of watching Pastor Greg deliver the word. I think you will be as enthusiastic about it as the Doc Owen show is. He's a really fine young man.
Yes.
Let's talk about we've got a few minutes left. Let's talk about some current events. A, because we said we would in the title of the show, and B, because that's kind of the way we do things. So we spend 45 minutes giving you background and the ability to connect the dots across generations in the past, which I think is extremely important. As we've quoted, the farther back you look, the further ahead you can see. Trump followed through with a major commitment. It's not the first thing that he committed to during his campaign that he's followed through with, but it certainly will have the largest impact on a global scale. All right. He, this afternoon, approximately 3 o'clock Eastern time, I think, announced the fact and made it absolute that the United States is no longer going to honor the Paris Accord, as it is called, which is a conglomeration of 195 countries in the world that were signed on to this accord to participate against climate change, was the whole charade. And that's exactly what it is a cotton picking. It's a charade. It has nothing to do with climate change, which has been thoroughly, I don't want to say debunked, because that gets people all in a frenzy, especially those that think it's real. I saw a cover of Time magazine today that was published in 1977, and the title on the Time magazine was "How to Survive the Coming Ice Age." So apparently myself, Uncle Bocce, and all of you in our listening audience probably survived the Ice Age. I'd like to congratulate you. I'm not sure what you did as preppers to get there or to be prepared. I can tell you what I did to be here tonight. Absolutely freaking nothing. And that's the same thing that I was going to do for climate warming, which is, it's the seas are going to rise and New York City is going to be underwater by midnight tomorrow if you listen to these people. Trump made a logical businessman's decision. The Paris Accord was nothing more than the Obama administration giving away our hard-earned money to the rest of the world to try to sort of make us all equal, bring us down, bring them up, so we could all be equal on a global basis. It's a really nice thought. It has no place in, it doesn't work that way. Even the Bible says it doesn't work that way. I mean, it has never worked that way. It's never going to work that way. So, that's just, so all Trump did was do exactly what he said he was going to do and do everything he could to make America great again. He instantly put $150 billion back into our pockets that we don't have to come up with to, spread out there for nonsense. I want to say very brief, we've got about 2 minutes, very quickly about this. I don't even remember her first name, this clown that did the routine with Kathy Griffin. Donald J. Trump, like it or not, Ms. Griffin, and anybody who supports your act, which is less and less, I understand, is the President of the United States of America. Donald J. Trump is the President of the United States of America. As such, he is due some respect. The office of the presidency gets respect. End of discussion. He vanquished 16 competitors to get to run and another one to win. He is the President of the United States. Suck it up. No, I've never seen anything like this. I've been through a lot of these. Democrats won, Republicans won, Democrats won, Republicans won. Never, ever, ever have I seen such temper tantrums and nonsense coming out of the losing side. I hope you keep it up. I hope every cotton-picking Democrat out there runs these protests right up until the election in 2018, because it'll just cause you to lose more and more and more seats. You're making idiots of yourself.
That's right.
Please. And for the audience, if you have friends that... Front row. Time to go. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Now go out there this week and take care, pay attention, and God bless.
Bye-bye, folks. God bless.